All right, we are live with this week's episode of the Happy Strong Family live cast. And this time around, we have a special guest, a Markham native, Sister Kashmala Qasim. So, Sister Kashmala, welcome to the show.
Jazakallah for inviting me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Now, let's start off with the topic. It's quite an involved one. Mentioned off air that you have a son, so we both have kids now. It bothers me to the core that my kids do take my phone
Right.
and they automatically go to YouTube.
Right.
And now with the default setting of YouTube, it's YouTube Shorts. So they are building in themselves ADHD,
Right.
by the fact that it's just 5 seconds and then
Yeah.
swipe up, 5 seconds, take the thumb, swipe up, 5 seconds,
Mhm.
swipe up, swipe up. So the whole theme of today's show is just that. And it's a very heavy title. I do have to read it. It's Connecting to Disconnect, Promoting Connection with Children, with your children, in a hyper technological world. Now, that's quite the tongue twister, but quite effectively, Sister Kashmala, what does it all mean?
Okay, that's that's a lot. No pressure on me. Jazakallah again for introducing me and for inviting me here. So I do have a 6-year-old son and a 1-year-old daughter. So even my baby will take my phone and she will just hold it, and it's scary to see. And I can only blame myself because I'm always on my phone for work purposes as well and for entertainment purposes. To be honest.
Oh, you can blame the aunties
Yes.
and uncles as well. I
Yes.
mean, come on, I'm an uncle, and I know even with my newest niece,
Right.
Walia Noor, who we call the Princess of Light in a very literal translation. We were all at the Muslim Fest last night, happening
Right.
here at Masjid
Yes.
Darul Iman in Markham, and she took my phone. Well, I actually gave her my phone
Right.
because she was getting all fussy and stuff,
Yes.
and then automatically she's just glued to it. Like it's
Exactly.
like,
Right.
ooh, wow,
What
what is
is
this
this thing?
shiny device, right?
Yes.
This bright light.
Right, absolutely. And these YouTube shorts, even I just discovered them. I think this week, and I was basically addicted to it. It just in a matter of seconds because I just thought, okay, this is funny. This is also funny, and then I showed it to my husband, and he found it funny, and it just yeah. So I totally understand this. So
Wait. This is quite the
yeah.
admission. You are admitting on air,
Yes.
on camera, in front of a live audience
Right.
that someone who's completed their undergraduate studies in psychology from
Right.
U of T,
Yes.
completed a master's in neuroscience from McMaster, and you've also received your Talim al-Quran diploma from Al-Huda.
Yes.
So you're quite accomplished.
Sure.
So
that's
you're
the way.
admitting that you've also gotten addicted to YouTube
Oh,
Shorts.
absolutely, yes. I think I just want to just kind of clear the air here that whenever we have workshops like these, podcasts, things like that, that the people who are speaking, we are also in the same boat as the audience members. There's nothing special about us or anything like that. I think the only perhaps difference might be that now, because of my PhD research, a lot of it is focused on community-based psychology, developmental psychology, Muslim mental health, that perhaps I might have a little bit more awareness of the dangers of these things. So if I can speak to your first, I guess, question or about how to disconnect and how to connect more.
Please.
I'm coming again from a research point of view, not so much from a clinical psychology. I have some counseling and therapy experience, but that was a previous life. So I will bring in research. I'll bring a little bit of counseling and some of my Quranic studies at Al Huda, inshallah, as well. So the first thing I would say is that studies show that limiting the screen time or limiting certain like websites or restricting websites, not exactly the most proactive approach, and it doesn't show to be very effective either.
Oh, okay.
So that's interesting. There's some studies showing that, and again, I'm not going to quote like all the authors and the sample sizes and data analysis here, but generally, what authors suggest is that involvement over limitation is the better approach. So involvement over limitation would mean something like, instead of saying, okay, no YouTube for you for the rest of the week, you can ask your child, so what are you watching on YouTube? Can you show me a funny like cat video or a funny like 5-minute arts and crafts video, whatever your child is into? If it's appropriate, of course. If it's not appropriate, then you would go to the next step, which is initiating tough conversations. So before something pops up on the screen, you as a parent we have to kind of get out of our little bubbles and just think about, okay, what are the top like 3 or 4 things that could come up on a screen? And this includes heavy things like pornography, hate comments, bullying, cyberbullying, all of that. And you're initiating that conversation before it happens, just taking that proactive approach. And then the third step would be to maximize openness and minimize secrecy. And maximizing openness would be like, hey, like I'm not going to go through your passwords or go through your history, making your kids feel really like just comfortable with their space, especially if they're older.
Okay.
And just minimizing secrecy that, hey, like maybe you're passing by and, hey, I saw you on Reddit, just wondering like what you were reading on Reddit without any judgment. So
Right.
those are the 3 steps from one of the studies that I read earlier this week that promote just more openness, and instead of just focusing on like, okay, you have 20 minutes to watch this and you can't go on this website and you can't do this, this approach might work better.
That's powerful. And I myself haven't heard of that. I've
Mhm.
always heard, anecdotally speaking, that, just ask what your kids are up to, watch what they're watching, sit down with them. But I like how that's framed. So it's effectively, just to recap, it is involvement
Yes.
versus limitation,
Yes.
or basically flat out suspension,
Exactly.
if we kind of take it a little bit further.
Alright.
So then, Sister Kashmala, what can parents do in terms of, impacting their relationships with their children? Because social media is so omnipresent,
Yes.
right? It's just everywhere. And there's so many platforms that I think the number one challenge, whether it's me talking as a person or as a parent or somebody that's involved with the mosque here at Darul Iman, or as a family member, a professional who focuses on digital media, I could go at it 12 ways to Sunday, but at the end of the day, it's just so hard to keep up.
Yes.
Right? There are
Absolutely.
things like Discord servers, which
Yeah.
all the gamers are on, and yes,
Yes.
some of the crypto folks.
Right.
There's Reddit.
Yeah.
There is, of course, TikTok,
Right.
which is the big one nowadays.
Yes.
There's Instagram. I don't know about Facebook. It's kind of a
Right.
dying thing.
Yes.
But that being said, what can parents do
Yes.
at the end of the day? Because it's just so hard to
Right.
keep up.
Yes.
I think, how do we educate the parents
Right.
so that they can take this approach of getting involved?
Right. That's a really good question. I think I also fell back into this as well. That I started reading up on like crypto on Reddit, and then metaverse. I got fully sucked into the metaverse thing. I was like, oh no, our kids are gonna be wearing these goggles and just in a different world. That might also happen, I think, in just a matter of a few years. So you can't keep up with all this technology, as you said. So I'm just gonna bring it back to psychology. So we're gonna talk about thought, emotion, and behavior. That's I like to
okay.
always just break things down.
Thought, emotion, and
And
behavior.
behavior, yes.
Okay.
So in terms of thoughts, especially when we're connecting with our children, to stay away from black and white or all or nothing or catastrophic thinking. These are just more clinical terms.
Mhm.
Sometimes, especially with social media, we'll say, okay, you can't watch this at all, or you can't do this at all. So
Mm.
instead of having that all or none thinking, just being more nuanced and eliciting feedback. So that's one of the behavior side of things that you like to watch this thing. Can you tell me why? So asking for feedback, especially if you have an older child, but even as young as like 5 or 6.
Mhm.
My own son, I have had to work on this throughout my therapy and research process. Instead of just lecturing him on like, you watched like 2 hours of Paw Patrol already or Magic School Bus. Of course, these are the more innocent cartoons. Just asking him like, hey, like, how do you feel when you put on Netflix on your iPad, or you take mama's phone and put on something on YouTube,
Right.
and it creates a good dialogue.
And of course, you do
conversation.
ask about Ryder of Paw Patrol. Right?
Yes, exactly.
He's
So
the number
you
one
have to
character,
ask
of
about
course.
Ryder, who your favorite character is. So eliciting feedback and staying away from all or none approaches. So just like, you can't do this or you can do this,
Mhm.
being more nuanced, how we would be with other people in our lives, so especially with our kids and parent relationship. The second thing is emotion and personality. So really understanding your child's personality. If I had to pick, like, reading like 10 or 15 articles on crypto or on the dangers of social media, I'd rather that you read 10 articles on child personality and childhood development.
Okay.
So one model that we use, and I'm going to go into a little bit of detail in that model, just so parents can understand and assess themselves and their child. It's called OCEAN, and it's an acronym. So
Okay.
O stands for openness to experience. C is for conscientiousness, like how organized, how structured your child is, or if they're not, they don't mind clutter, they don't mind a little bit of messiness.
Mhm.
E is for extrovertedness versus introvertedness.
Okay.
A is for agreeableness. So do they just like to get along with everybody, or are they kind of like, nope, I have my own opinions?
Mhm.
And then N is for neuroticism, which is emotional stability. So do
Okay.
they are they kind of moody throughout the day? Are they just at a baseline? And these is a whole like model of personality. But you can go online and you can do the scale. You could go to a therapist and you can get this done. It's a really easy self-assessment scale,
Mhm.
and you just understand your child a lot better. So, for example, if they're extremely introverted, let's just say on the scale they get 75% introversion, then you know that after a long day and just seeing aunties and uncles and going to your in-laws' place and playing with cousins, when they come home, they might want to watch a little bit of Paw Patrol or they
Right.
might want some screen time. So at that time, you're not going to say no, for example. So taking their personality first and then basing your decisions off of that.
Okay. Okay.
The third thing is more the behavioral factor. So connection before correction, always.
Oh, connection before correction.
Yes.
Okay.
So connection before correction is essentially it's like a golden rule of developmental psychology and just parent-child relationships. So before you're going in to correct something, to correct a behavior, just think that okay, since the kids woke up till now, have I connected with them throughout the day?
Mm.
And sometimes as parents, we think connection is like, yes, I was talking to them the whole day. I told him to put the laundry away. I told him to clean his room. I told her to like stop doing this. Those are just commands. That's not connection.
Right.
So connection is actually sitting down one on one. And again, if you know your child's personality and you know your personality, all of
Mhm.
this might take some therapy, might take some counseling, some reflection. Then you'll know that maybe my first son, he loves playing. So playing is his form of connection. My daughter, perhaps she prefers doing like an art project or painting together.
Mhm.
My youngest child, maybe he or she prefers drawing something or going outside and just like playing with a ball or just shooting some hoops.
All
So
right.
every child will connect differently. You have to figure out as a parent. After that connection is done, and then you tell them that, hey guys, it's a little bit too long on the screens, or you haven't really cleaned up your room, maybe clean up your room, put that stuff away, then you can have screens. Much higher chance that your child will accept that correction.
Okay. So basically, just to recap,
Yeah.
more for the parents who are watching this, and
Yes.
I think for a lot of parents, this is completely new.
Oh, okay.
Completely not
Okay,
new.
I thought I was
Right?
Yeah.
No, I mean let's look at it. Look, even for me growing up, you know, being first generation Canadian, I nowhere in any school,
Right.
whether it was public school, high school, or university, was I ever taught, you know, the basics of parenting.
Right.
This is kind of something you just step into,
Step into exactly.
literally.
Yes.
Um, only now that I'm part of this organization do I kind of get to hear from, you know, professionals like yourself who are actually involved in, you know, the frameworks of psychology and well-being and mental health and whatnot, parenting,
Yes.
right? So for a lot of parents, isn't it now, whether it's maybe generational or maybe you're a new immigrant to Canada, or maybe you could be first generation, second generation, but again, you just haven't been given the exposure to any of these.
Yes.
I think for a lot of parents, and probably I'm just at least speaking for myself,
Right.
it's kind of like, you know, the authoritarian model,
Exactly.
where it's like you do this, you do that,
Right.
and it's just a list of tasks, as you
Exactly.
say it, right?
Yes.
You're not building that connection.
Exactly.
My mother-in-law was a school principal, and she'd always, and this is kind of a very rough translation from Urdu,
Right.
it's like, you know, look at your child with the loving eyes of a sheep or something,
Okay.
but then kind of be protective of them like a lion,
Like a
or
lion,
something,
okay.
something like that. The sheep
Right.
lion, whatever that analogy
Yes,
is,
yeah.
right? Very rough. I
Yes.
probably haven't done any justice to the translation.
Yeah.
But I think for someone who may have been a principal, who kind of applied it to their family, but again, that's an outlier.
Right.
So what can parents do to kind of just remind themselves, whether it's the premise of ocean
Right.
and all of that, what that acronym stands
Right.
for, or whether it's continually reinforcing as a parent that, you know what, hey, I'm being a dad right now, or
Right.
I'm being a mom right now, or I'm being a single parent even.
Mhm.
I need to build a connection first with my
Yes.
child before wearing, you know, the corrective hat, right? Or wearing that hat where I need to, you know, correct my child's behavior because, you know, oh my God, they've just all of a sudden told me they want to start dating, or they want to
Right.
go to the mall,
Yes.
or they, you know, want to hang out with their friends, or or bring it back full circle to social media, they're watching too much YouTube and it's affecting their grades,
Yes.
or they're not even getting out of the house.
Right.
How can parents just kind of mentally step into this?
Yes, it's a great question. I'm trying to keep all of that in mind. It is a lot for sure. Okay, so the first thing I would say is I always bring back research. I feel like research that gives you that evidence base. So you're like, okay, there's studies showing this, so I can follow something substantial, inshallah. So we know from studies that pro-social behavior is the best indicator of academic achievement even later on. So pro-social behavior is getting off your screens, going outside and talking to people, volunteering, doing experiential learning activities, which is like doing something outside for somebody else and then reflecting on how you felt, the emotions that came about as well. I think what's happening with parents, my parents' generation, even our generation, the focus is so much on academic achievement.
Completely.
So a lot of connection, I think, gets lost perhaps in that. So our only connection is like, how was school? What did you do? What grade did you get? Where's your report card? So that is, of course, not
You forgot to
connection.
put the word beta in front.
Oh, beta. I was going to say beta for beta. Yes, yeah.
I was already at school.
Exactly.
What grade did you get? Hopefully it wasn't an F grade.
Yes, exactly.
Has to be A.
Yes. Got 90%. Where's the other 10%? So I don't know. So all of these things, again, important conversations at the right time, at the right place, but not important forms of connection. So just remembering for us as parents that if we can get our children involved more in pro-social activities, and that will basically force us to get out of our comfort zone as well. It could be things like getting our kids involved in public speaking, for example. I'm very thankful for my dad that he sort of got me involved in public speaking at a very early age. He would drive me to like public speaking competitions, to improv, to debate practices, because when I was born, they thought there was something wrong with my voice box. So I did not talk. I was extremely, extremely shy. So just being involved outside of school, because our schools did not offer these types of opportunities.
Right. So everyone,
yes.
just watch out for Kashmala's next appearance at the Yuck Yucks Comedy Club, coming to a location near you.
Yes, exactly. This
I just had to give you a plug.
Thank you. I'm still so bad at improv and things like that. The second step is, of course, volunteering outside of school. So I think a lot of, just again, my generation included, and our previous generation, I think not so much them, but especially now, the over involvement in structured extracurricular activities. So those are great. Like, great, you need to go swimming, you need to learn skating, all these things are fine. But what I personally noticed, and this is the problem with being in psychology, you're always like psychoanalyzing everything. I try not to. When I would take my son to like skating practice or to swimming practice, all the parents are just like pick and drop. Like, okay, you go here, you go there. Then they just wait for the practice to be over. And while parents are waiting, they're on their phones.
Yeah.
And that's again, not creating any form of connection. So maybe thinking outside the box from these types of activities. So unstructured play and unstructured activities can really help. With connection, it could be something as simple as just going out into your backyard. You don't have to go find a fancy trail for hiking. It could just be going to Tim Hortons and just sitting there and just talking. And it's like, and not talking about homework and not talking about when the next practice is.
Right.
Just like, hey, like, do you like your donut? Or like, this has a lot of sugar. Maybe stay away from that as well. Talking about things, whatever that comes up for you, that society is not dictating that what your child should be doing at this time on a Tuesday evening. Be brave enough as parents to go outside.
Right.
That mold, I know many times the 9 to 5 and the 9 to 4 school work days don't allow for this flexibility, but maybe having a little bit of flexibility to engage in pro-social behaviors, which will hopefully inculcate connection as well.
So effectively, you're telling the parents out there who are listening to get off WhatsApp, get off their Facebook, depending on which age group you're in, or get off Gram, stop posting those Instagram stories, or even if need be, get off TikTok. Is that what you're effectively saying?
I'm not saying that. I don't get off anything. So again, not the black and white thinking. So it's not like completely like know this and know that. Just again, everyone knows their balance. I think we all kind of know our fitra, our just predisposition. It tells us if it's like 1 a.m. and you're on TikTok, you're like, okay, I should be sleeping right now. I should not be on TikTok. So you can judge for yourself.
So then I think the other issue we need to kind of block and tackle here, Sister Kashmala, is just with everything going on with, social media at large and influencers, right? It's like you said earlier, if we are to build a connection with our child, if we are to kind of be involved and not go to the extreme route of, oh my gosh, it's a suspension, it's a timeout, you're going to have to get off of social media, you're going to have to do as I say. How can parents themselves, or even the kids, for any young adults or youngsters or kids watching and listening, how can we not kind of how can we turn away from the spotlights of the influencers? I think is really the question here, because it's just too much of a powerful draw, right? It's these influencers that are like, oh, look, I have a perfect life. Oh, look at me. I'm now out in the Bahamas again with my family, or look at me. I'm out here and eating just a plate of fruit and my life is so wonderful under the Caribbean sun, or I'm now backpacking across Europe or in an RV, or I'm now at another conference. Look at me, right? It's like how can we not, either as parents or as people in general, regardless of age, fall into that trap? Because I don't think enough people really understand that influencers make a career out of it.
Yes. Exactly.
So at the end of the day, never mind the word influencer, it's their job to influence people because they're trying to make money out of it.
Exactly. Those are all great questions and points. Number one, I would say is, I think the idea of belongingness comes up for me a lot over here. So many times, especially for teens and youngsters and even adults now, belongingness is such a fundamental human, it's just so part of us that we need to feel like we belong somewhere. So as our communities are sort of pushing people away sometimes, or there is no community, or our parents are busy with work, just because of our overly structured lives, overly stimulated lives, kids and teens many times do feel like they don't belong anywhere.
Right.
But as soon as they start watching an influencer, and many of these people that even I watch on YouTube, sometimes they'll say things like, you are enough, you are worth it. And nobody else is saying that to them in their real life.
Yeah.
But online, these people are telling them, you are enough, God loves you, all of that sort of stuff. So I think as people in the real world, so as real life parents, siblings, community members, I know it might sound like cheesy too, especially coming from a Pakistani background and a Desi background. My parents always they know I'm in this field. So even I coach them sometimes you could just say you are enough. And we don't say that. Right? It's not in our culture to say I love you and these types of things. But if you don't say it, somebody online will say it. And that person will become the role model. And then we see now coming to counseling practices and therapeutic practices. It's been really sad and shocking that a lot of parents have come into our offices at Khalil Center, through me personally as well, that somebody has been talking to their children. Somebody DM'd them, they found someone abroad, and their whole life became around that person. So that person influenced them so much so that they changed their gender identity, they changed their sexual preferences, they moved halfway across the world because of such a powerful influence online. So that means our offline influences are nowhere near as powerful.
Right. Now, just to kind of bridge that, we do have a question from the audience. So, Producer Kashif, go ahead.
Yeah, so Assalamu alaikum. We actually have a few questions from the audience. I'll paraphrase this one a little bit, but the audience member is asking that in their household, they're trying to make the dinner table the hub of family and conversations and try to emphasize having dinner as much as possible together, but they're having trouble sort of just engaging kids even at that. So what are some tools and techniques at the dinner table that you can sort of use to bring forward meaningful conversations?
That's a great question. I think it kind of goes back, if you've studied American history, it's that Norman Rockwell painting where the fireplace is kind of brimming in the background and everyone's just centered around a table, and it's like that nuclear family structure: mom, dad, two kids, one boy and a girl, and the dog somewhere in the background, right? But I mean, realistically speaking, because it is a great question. That's what a lot of parents are grappling with, right? Maybe it is dinner time it's that one time of the day where everyone gathers, hopefully, and everyone is not on their phone and texting each other across the table, because that in and of itself has become a meme.
Exactly.
So what can parents do?
Yes, great question. Thank you. So I'm gonna bring in a study again. Sorry, me and my research. I want to give you an evidence-based
Yeah,
answer.
no, this is powerful,
Yes,
right?
yes.
It's not someone just giving an opinion.
Yes, yes. So hopefully it's not. This is from what I have read, and again, research is always changing, so studies can change again tomorrow or the next week. But the current literature shows that the dinner table is not the norm. It's not actually the best way to get people talking. So
What? Can you repeat that? So it's not.
dinner table. It could work for you,
Mhm.
but from certain studies, they show this is for younger children. So this could be different for older children, but for younger children to even preteens, before bedtime is one of the best times to talk.
Oh.
And while they are playing, so that play could be anything, Legos or just outside in the backyard, painting. So while they're engaging in something, and then they will start talking. So I tried this. I always apply the research then as well to my own. I experiment with my son, which is not good. So right before bed, while I'm reading the surahs, and then I'll just ask him, "Hey, can you tell me your favorite part of today?" And then he will just unleash and tell me everything. At dinner time, I asked him the exact same question, but he was like, I don't know. He just forgets everything.
Oh my God,
at dinner
yes.
time.
You're so right. Yeah, that
Yeah.
is the number one response. I don't know.
No. Everything was fine.
What do you want me to say?
Right.
I'm eating my peas, or I'm trying to.
Exactly. Right. So it could be, maybe it's just there's a lot of pressure around dinner time. It could be, I'm not sure what the psychological effects of dinner time conversation are. So before bedtime, and while they're engaged in something that they enjoy. So especially during time, I think there is that pressure of okay, eat your food, you take enough bites and this and that. While they're playing Lego after dinner, after the cleanup is done, whatever that your family routine is, at that time, they're engaged in something that they're enjoying. And then when you ask them questions while you're playing with them, so you're going to first connect, you're going to get down on the floor, play with them, get outside, start doing whatever they're doing, and then just very naturally insert a question oh, hey, I saw you with this person today, or you're watching this video. And hopefully that has worked for me so far with my 6-year-old son. It might look different for 16-year-olds. I'll have to see when he gets to that age, inshallah.
Let's just hope your son doesn't rewind and watch these episodes at
Yes,
a later
exactly.
stage and be like, Mom, you flat out said I was your experiment.
Exactly. You're tricking me this whole time and testing on me.
Producer Kashyap, another question.
Yes, we have another question here. So the question is saying, can we bring up taboo, difficult subjects like relationships, death, life after death, God, and how do we do that? Difficult and taboo subjects.
Yes.
Oh, that's a great question. And I think a lot of parents either have that kind of inherent fear in them, or again, they just don't know, right? Because maybe it's their own background, it's their own upbringing, which goes back to, if modeling is the right word, maybe their own parents were kind of like that role model where it was just Beta Betty, I've never said I love you. I've always told you what to do in terms of a task list.
Yes.
And this is the way. Maybe this was the culture back then, or maybe, I had to work so many hours in the day that I couldn't really give you the attention, whatever, yada, yada.
Yes.
So how do parents bridge that difficult question?
Yes.
Questions.
Yeah. There's so many topics now that are difficult topics. Thank you for that, for the question. Not research now clinical practice shows us that you lead by the child. So you kind of wait for your child to ask a question, and they will start off as very innocent. So when they're 4 or 5, might be you might be changing your baby's diaper, and your son might ask, "Hey, something looks different there. That's not how I look down there." That's something that my son asked when my newborn, when he first saw a diaper change. So you will just wait for them to start asking the questions. So you're not going to start talking about private parts and the privacy and things like that. Just wait for their question. And again, this will only happen if you have created that safe space, that warmth, that non-judgmental attitude. And this, I think I forgot to mention earlier, the 4 principles of counseling that you don't have to be a counselor, but anyone with some practice, with some reflection and reading can apply.
Okay.
So empathy in your conversations, validation. Validation is that you're not agreeing with everything your child is saying. You're just repeating back what they're saying. Easiest way to validate
a mirror
someone.
technique.
Mirroring technique, exactly.
Okay.
Non-judgmental attitudes. When they tell you, "Oh, I have a crush on this guy," you don't go like that. They will never tell you anything again. That
you've been grounded for life.
Exactly. And a safe space to talk about these tough topics. So it does start early on, but I mean, even later on, if this has not been developed in your family culture, you can still start. And as soon as they see that you are responding with that empathy, you're journeying with them. These are very counseling terms. You're not sympathizing. You're not saying, "Oh, I feel so bad for you. I feel so bad for your generation."
Right.
You're empathizing with them. It's yeah, I can see where you're coming from. Like really getting into their language, into their shoes. And you don't have to be those cringy parents that like use the term like the Gen X terms. You don't have to like, say like vibing and I don't know the different terms that even I don't know because I'm also I feel so much older now. You can use your own parenting terms. You can say beta, beti, but with empathy, with validation as
Right,
well.
right,
So you're gonna
right.
pick up on your child's cues. They come back from school. They say, "Oh, I saw like a rainbow flag today." Okay,
Right.
that's your cue to start talking about homosexuality and Pride Month.
Right.
So
Right.
that's just what the clinical practice shows.
Okay. Okay. Great answer for the question.
Yeah, so this one's more of a question from me.
Okay.
So I know I was at the Friday lecture that Sister Kashmala had here at the Masjid Al Iman, so much that was very meaningful, and I took that as an opportunity to ask her some questions there also. But I'll ask one. So just for context, I have a 4-year-old, and one of our biggest challenges I'm finding is that we want to try to have some limits and rules in place, but everyone around us is not following those same things. So, for example, one common thing is we try to limit his device time and screen time, maybe 15, 20 minutes on the weekends. But if we go to a gathering, all the 4-year-olds have devices in their hand, they're all
Right.
gathered around it.
Right.
So
Yes.
in that moment, like it's hard to, but like how do we explain to him? Because obviously naturally his is, well, why is so and so doing
Yes.
it? Why is so and so? So
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
so
Great question.
Yes,
Great question.
that's a really good question.
And either again,
Yeah.
it's not like you can blame your brothers and sisters and siblings and being,
Exactly.
oh, you're not being a good uncle, are you? Or a
Yes.
good auntie? Like, come on, like what's up with
Right.
this? All the other kids have except
Yes.
my child, right? So
Yes.
that's a tough one.
That's a really
how
tough
do you
one.
navigate that?
Yeah, yeah, especially with like with our collectivistic culture, like we're around like in-laws and cousins and nannies and nanas or grandparents, so it is difficult. We also homeschool our children. Nobody else really homeschools in our family, but they're all very supportive of it,
Mhm.
alhamdulillah. But the influences are coming from all directions. It's not like homeschool kids are sheltered. There's still a lot of just influences from the neighbors, from the families, from everyone. So what we have learned, especially from counseling and when we have like from family therapy, essentially,
Mhm.
is that if the majority of the time your boundaries are being followed, the minority, like 10% of the time, you can be a little bit lax. So,
Okay.
sugar comes as an example. So, giving treats. Monday to like Thursday, for example, you are the primary parent, but you are restricting sugar intake. For example, like you have it, like you can have one Jolly Rancher or one little mini pack of Smarties after dinner. That's your rule in your house. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, your siblings come over. Maybe you're going out to a festival. Maybe you're going out to the grandparents, the in-laws' house, and they're a bit more relaxed with the sugar rule. Especially the older generation, they still have that mentality of like, no, no, they need the energy, and sugar does. Yes, it is a form of energy. It breaks down into that, and they will give juice and like fruits, and then more cakes and muffins and things after that. At that time, it's okay to let them take control as long as the child knows that if there's something that they're confused about, that they are coming to you. But at that time, to have a conflict with your family members in front of your child, that I'm the parent, like I'm the mother, that actually has very negative consequences on the child. So
Right,
being
right.
flexibility in this case is better than having those rigid boundaries and rules.
Right. And I think again, it's just, maybe it's the way a lot of people have been raised with that
Yeah.
helicopter parent approach,
Yes.
or just that the tiger mom approach. I
Yes.
don't want to use all these titles and labels, but it's just like you kind of swoop in
Yes.
and be like, no, 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 no. And then,
Exactly.
but again, that creates conflict, right?
Yes.
And you're not, if anything, you're kind of breaking the potential connection and bond with your
Exactly.
child that you could have at that time.
Yes, exactly.
And kind of just, pointing them out.
Exactly. And if there is like concern, then again, you could do the proactive approach. You could just like maybe message on your WhatsApp groups to your family and just say, hey, we do have these like sort of boundaries. If you're able to respect them, most people will, if you let them know from beforehand. In the moment, if you tell them that, no, that's too much sugar, you already gave them a juice box, it's a little bit tricky, but maybe beforehand. And I think people are coming around, like in-laws and grandparents, they will respect it. But sometimes like even my mom will be like, can you just have one more scoop of ice cream? And it's like, okay, fine. Like it's fine. Like that psychologically at that time is more important than like a little bit of extra sugar.
Right. And I think we're getting one more question. Mashallah, we've had a lot of questions in today's session, which is a good thing.
Okay, that's a good thing, inshallah.
the question is, what are your thoughts on research that talks about differences in brains? Sorry, I can't read that word. Brains that read versus brains that watch.
Oh, great question. Yeah. So let's kind of break this question down, dissect it. I think nowadays, not to kind of put a time frame or again a generational
Right.
stamp on it. I
Yeah.
don't know whether it's the millennials or Generation Alpha, which is like the
Yes,
youngest kids, right?
Yeah.
Or the Boomer generation,
Yeah.
whatever generation you may be. But I think there's something lost nowadays, being in the 2000s, that people just don't read enough, right?
Yes.
It's now such a visual culture that people will always tell you, hey, I had to fix my car brakes. Maybe that's a bad example. I had to kind of change the faucet,
Right.
right? It's a leaky faucet. I went to YouTube.
Right.
Okay, great.
Yes.
I mean, they didn't go and read a book on it.
Exactly.
They just went to YouTube and
Yes.
looked at the visual and the video.
Yes.
So what is there that maybe is lost in translation, kind of borrow from the phrase,
Yep.
from not reading?
Yes, that's a great question, just off of Ken, especially since it's a research question. So I'm really, really passionate about this. Lots of studies done on this. It's like a very, very extensive literature. Honestly, I can't get into every single variable. But what we are seeing, first of all, the social ramifications of it. So increased use of social media and of just being on a screen versus reading. Reduces our eye contact when we meet other people, reduces our attention spans, and so we are also seeing increased diagnoses of ADHD and different attention problems as well. And it also reduces our ability to connect with somebody one-on-one, because we're always in this sort of performative view online. So we are performing for others, especially if you are an influencer or if you make videos, even just for fun, you're in this like performative mode. Okay, for like 30 minutes, for 20 minutes, I just have to be somebody else.
Right.
And then when you're offline, you're just like, you're maybe a slob, like you're not very social at all. So our social behaviors get impacted definitely with increased screen time. One study showed that their sort of cutoff was 2 hours or more. So they considered the significant findings showed that if when teenagers are watching or engaging in screens for more than 2 hours, that's when the negative effects were coming in. And 2 hours is not much at all. I think we're on our screens way more than
Way
2
more.
I was
Yeah.
surprised that 2 hours was when it was like, okay, negative effects started coming in.
Mhm.
The negative effects again included lower academic achievement. For girls, especially lower levels of self-esteem and self-worth as well. So self-esteem is like, if I get a good grade, I'm a good person. Self-worth is like, no, I'm a good person. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created me. I have a purpose. So you just know that you are here for a purpose. But
Right.
both these things go down, especially for girls after engaging in, I believe it was Instagram predominantly.
Right.
So you can imagine how that link might be happening. So social causes, self-esteem causes, academic achievement, attention causes, like the list goes on. So the brain, the neuropsychology of essentially is that our neuronal connections are also becoming destroyed or enhanced through social media and through screens. So with social media, with screens, the trait that is really increasing, and I'm sure has effects on the brain as well, is narcissism, because we're constantly watching just this really weird. There's a term for it. I'm forgetting the term now, where there's like a superficial relationship between you and this person on a screen. It's not a real relationship. I'm not sure if you heard that term. I forget what it is now, but it's not a real relationship. And the person who is on the other side is talking about themselves the entire time. Then you go into the comment section and you're talking about yourself and what you thought of the video. So we're
Right.
seeing higher traits of narcissism as well. Whereas reading a book is a lot slower. You have to slow down. The stimulation is a lot less as well. So that has been linked to increased attention, increased academic achievement, and also increased levels of self-worth and self-esteem, especially when you can recall what you've read in a book. And the social sort of norms around book reading, like if you see somebody with a book these days, you're like, oh, you're reading, like what book is that? And,
Yeah.
and just to be able to talk to someone about a book instead of saying like, hey, you want to watch this video with me? It's a cat video or something funny online. So a lot of different academic, social, attention, and personality differences between reading a book, and there's definitely neuropsychological and neurological differences versus going on a screen.
Now, to kind of wrap this up,
Yes.
I for whatever reason, I don't know, it's coming to me that
Yeah.
there's a movie that I watched with my kids, the Crudes. Okay, it's about like the caveman time,
Right,
showing
okay.
this, caveman family, and apparently has we're wrapping up in 5
Yes.
minutes. I've just been given the signal by producer Kasha,
Sure.
who actually sits behind the cameras in our production booth. So with that, they're like, it's got Nicolas Cage, it's got
Okay.
all these, Hollywood celebs voicing the family.
Mhm.
But the funny part in that is that they're kind of becoming, modern as the movie progresses,
Okay.
with things like, taking photos, and
Yes.
it shows like all in Flintstones kind of way
Right.
with everything going on. Obviously, it's done in prehistoric times.
Yes.
But one thing that always kind of strikes me is one of the son, the older teenage son.
Right.
He all of a sudden comes onto like a picture frame, right?
Okay.
Like a stone picture frame.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden he's like, oh wow, I'm watching the world from this one picture frame. So all of a sudden he's
There
like,
you go.
it's become like a TV screen for him,
Yes,
right? Which is like
yeah.
basically like a cell phone.
Exactly.
So his parents and his sister, or even like the sister is the hero of the
Okay.
movie. So the sister's like, you know what? Like just get off the screen.
Green.
Like you're literally living your life through
Right.
this screen. Like step outside of the screen.
Yes.
By I think the end of the movie, or maybe it's the second movie,
Right.
he like is like, you know what? Yeah, it's better to live life
Right.
outside of the screen.
Exactly.
So
very interesting.
I
Yeah.
think to wrap it up, it's not that we're saying, don't be on your phone. Be involved.
Mhm.
There are downsides,
Yeah.
clear clinical
Yes.
and psychological downsides
Yes.
of being too involved
Right.
with that screen time
Yeah.
and kind of being swayed by influencers
Mm-hmm.
or by the content, the videos you're watching or on whatever platform. Some are more, prone to people telling you or people kind of telling you that, you are valuable, you are worthy, when it should be really the job of the parents, right?
Exactly.
But I think on the other side, it's the parents that are really having a tough time to say like, I grew up just basically being told what to do.
Exactly.
And the list of quote unquote, this is halal, this is haram.
Right.
There was an episode of Miss Marvel, and I think one of the who's like the Muslim superhero,
Was it,
right?
yes, I have seen a trailer for this.
Yeah, I saw the trailer too.
Right.
And one of the funny things was like her friends are like one's wearing a halal hat and
Right.
one's wearing a haram hat, so
Okay.
they're halal and haram.
Right.
It's like
Very interesting.
so it's
yes,
like
yeah.
I think just parents give that list, right?
Yes.
This is halal, this is haram,
Right.
this is what you can do, what you can't do.
Right.
But I think it's something completely different to build that relationship
Yes.
with your child,
Yes.
right? Which we all hope as parents we do, but it's tough to kind of just remind yourself, hey,
Right.
here are some steps.
Yes.
So just to kind of wrap it all up, sorry, there's a comment here. I'm not a parent yet, but my wife and I are definitely taking notes. A lot of valuable knowledge being shared today. Jazakallah khair.
Awesome. Jazakallah
So
khair. Thank you.
just to all the parents to be,
Yes.
or the parents that are watching this, or the parents that are already involved, maybe they have a teenage daughter
Right.
or a young son such as yourself,
Right.
what, maybe in 1 or 2 minutes now to
Yes.
wrap up the show, what can you tell the parents?
Yes.
Parenting is tough.
Yes.
We all know it, right?
Yes, absolutely.
But we can't beat ourselves up too much and say, oh my God, I'm the worst parent ever. Like
Right.
I am just like overtaken by this. I don't
Right.
know. Oh, it's like that. I don't think that's
Exactly.
not the purpose of the show
Yes.
either.
Right.
The purpose of the show is always to have these tough conversations.
Right. Exactly.
But what kind of takeaways can you give?
Absolutely. So a couple of things quickly in just 1 or 2 minutes, inshallah. So first, I think we haven't touched upon this yet, but making lots of dua, of course, as Muslims.
100%.
So the duas that I would like to make, just my personal duas, is wisdom. Just having lots of wisdom in parenting. And wisdom is, as one of my teachers at Al Huda Institute gave her definition, and from different scholars, putting the right thing in the right place at the right time. So a lot of parenting has to do with like boundaries and restrictions and limitations and when to let them, when to not let them. So just doing it in the right tone, in the right place at the right time. When do I correct? When do I connect? Being able to manage all of these. And then I always make dua for just love and mercy and just the hearts coming together. So you might be a total extrovert, your teen is an introvert. They might say things like, I hate you, mom, and slam the door in your face. I don't know if kids still slam doors in parents' faces.
Yes, they do.
They do, right? Okay, that's still a thing. Okay. I will see now as my son grows up. So regardless of personality differences, regardless of what's happening in the research and clinical psych, if you have love and mercy and just like that coming togetherness of the hearts, everything will work out beautifully. You could have completely different viewpoints, but your hearts are together. And that is amazing. So making lots of dua, first of all, for all of these things, inshallah, and more. Secondly, I would say if you are parents to be, if I had to go back and before becoming a parent myself, attending parent workshops. So Khalil Center, putting a little plug for Khalil Center. We do lots of like parenting workshops, premarital counseling, things like that. If you're not even married yet, start even way before, and getting yourself educated. So if you're getting a driver's license, if you're going to university, if you're applying for a job, there's so many steps to getting there. You learn so much. There's training manuals. There's like different mock interviews, job shadowing. When you become a parent, as you said, you just step into it. Like no one tells you what to do. There's no training manual.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
getting yourself educated in those things. And finally, if you are already a parent, and if you're a struggling parent like many of us here are, I would say the best thing to remember is that a few like sort of like incidents here and there, maybe like one traumatic incident, is not going to ruin your child's life.
Mhm.
But to remember that developmental psychology looks a lot at trajectories. So many times I think as parents, especially as I'm calling on my culture here, Pakistani parents and Desi parents, we just say like, no, they're fine, or no, it's not a big deal. Um, Enough incidents of that same type of the way you're talking, lack of empathy, can create a trajectory for them.
Mhm.
That's a very traumatic one. And then they end up, again, as adults, being like not the best parents. And they end up in our therapeutic offices, basically asking for therapy because of attachment issues with their own parents, self-esteem issues.
Right.
So not just writing things off. It's like, no, like I did this too, or no, I used to walk to school and you can take the bus, and not just writing things off, being there, emotionally present, being there. And that's possible for us if we are, of course, off of our screens as well, inshallah.
That's great. Thank you so very
You're
much. That's
welcome.
well said. And just up on the
Mhm.
screen now, we do have the location of the Khalil
Oh,
Center.
yes.
And just on behalf of the Happy Strong Family team, I'll put it out there as well.
Yes.
A little bit of a plug for this organization. We should perhaps collaborate together. Happy Strong
Absolutely.
Family
Yes.
organization with the Khalil Center. So just
Yes.
have that kind of pan GTA coverage.
Yes.
So it's something to consider.
For sure.
And two, I think it was said very powerfully, very beautifully. Connect and correct.
Yes.
Right. So connect first.
Yes.
I think is the preoperative, preemptive kind of, that should be the first priority, and then correct.
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
So that I think was beautifully said,
Alhamdulillah.
and not enough parents kind of take that mindset
Right.
more than anything. Right. So yeah, we went through a lot
Right.
in the session. Thank you
Yes.
so very much. We
You're
discussed certain
welcome.
frameworks like Ocean,
Right. Yes.
to make that connection,
Yes.
to not slough things off,
Right.
and just say, oh, be dismissive.
Yes.
Right.
Right. Yes.
I think it's really just to, again, connect first
Yes.
and then correct.
Yes.
So Sister Kashmala, thank you so very much.
You're welcome. If there's any questions, people can email me as my Khalil Center email, and I can send you these things, Ocean, the studies we've talked about. I'm more than happy to share further, inshallah.
Great, phenomenal.
Yes.
Your email address then.
Yes. So it's kashmala@khalilcenter.com.
Okay.
Yes.
Great.
You can email me there, inshallah.
All right. So we'll wrap up now. Thank you again
You're welcome. Thank you
for
for having me.
being our guest for today. It was a tough topic.
It was.
And a very loaded topic.
Okay.
But I think if you as a parent, and sometimes I do stare directly into the camera just for impact, but if you've watched this and if you think that this episode can help any other parent, then please just forward this episode, because it's not one just of anecdotal, or it's not one that's just of opinion. There's some powerful information here, some powerful details from a clinical and psychological or psychology-based background, which is really, really important. So if as a parent or a parent-to-be, if you're watching this, spread the word, pass it around, forward it. And yes, we're going to have to rely on social media to do that. But again, the whole purpose and point of this episode was not to say that, to take that extreme route and say, oh my God, you're being suspended from social media, but just be involved. And that's how we started this episode.
Yes,
So thank you
exactly.
again.
Thank you. You're an amazing host, Jazakallah.